We start to record. Okay.
Well, thank you, Teresa. That's great. And for the folks that are just joining, I don't know if they heard Teresa. We'll get started here in just a few minutes. We'll wait for some of the other folks to join us.
Mm-hmm.
All right, a few more minutes, folks. We'll just wait to see if a couple more folks join us. Yeah, I see a couple more people trying to connect to audio, it says. I don't know about you guys, but I am definitely looking forward to the weekend. I think, what do we got, like 45 degrees or 50 degrees today, and then it's going to jump up like to like 65, and then even like in the mid 70s on Sunday. So we're talking about like, wow. And for those that joined us last time for Healthy Living for Brain and Body, this is a great weekend then to get out and maybe do a little exercise, get some fresh air. I mean, it's just, I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Okay. As I mentioned, everyone, we've got Ben and we have Aaron here bringing us the 10 symptoms that could let you inform you that Alzheimer's, what to look for. And we want to again thank them for a second time coming to be our presenters. We really do appreciate you taking the time, Ben and Aaron, to do this wonderful and most meaningful session. And I'm going to hand the mic over to you. Take it from here.
All right. Well, Teresa, thank you very much. And folks, we're happy and pleased to be here again. There were some folks a month or so ago that were maybe part of our presentation. So I met probably some of you, Ben and I met some of you for a Healthy Living for Brain and Body. And today we're going to talk about something different. We're going to talk about the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's and dementia. And before we even get into it, and before I do some introductions here, I want to highlight, just because we say, there's a warning sign, it could be one or more warning signs, it doesn't mean that someone has Alzheimer's or dementia. Cognitive impairments can be caused by a range of factors. It can be dehydration, it can be thyroid disease, it can be interactions of medications. So I'm just saying that up front. I'll probably say it multiple times during our during our discussion. But let's take a step back real quick. I want to introduce myself for those that haven't met myself and Ben. My name is Aaron Schulman. I am a volunteer community educator with the Alzheimer's Association. I've been doing this for about 3.5 years. Started doing it once I retired from a career in industry. And I'm also a member of the Alzheimer's National Volunteer Advisory Committee. I also, my other volunteer role, I work on as a volunteer as a crisis worker on the National Suicide Hotline. So a way to keep busy and quote retirement in addition to more family and friend time. With me today, some of you have met Ben previously. Ben Donnelly is the head of volunteer programs here in the National Capital Area. And Ben and I do a range of these programs throughout the National Capital Area for a whole variety of folks. We've been doing them virtually. We're actually going to start going, it looks like maybe back partly in person, starting after the April timeframe. So we're going to work that. And we're excited to be able to talk to people also in person in the upcoming months. So that's wonderful. So what I'm going to do today, similar to as I did last time, is I'm going to share my screen and we're going to have a presentation. Within the presentation, there's going to be a couple little video snippets that we'll use, a little bit of animation. And I know people's connections sometimes can be a little slower than maybe what I have here. So I may pause after a little video to let it catch up on your side. So if there's, I call it a pregnant pause, that's why. And make sure that folks are caught up. I'll ask that if you can hold questions until the end, except please, if you have a question, feel free to use the chat feature at the bottom there of the screen and type in any questions that you have. And Ben will be monitoring the chat as we go forward. So it could be questions related to the 10 warning signs. It could be other questions that you have about Alzheimer's or dementia. When we finish the session, we'll make sure we have hopefully plenty of time to be able to address any questions that you have. With that, Ben, anything else before we begin?
Nope, that sounds good. Yeah, and I'll try to put some helpful links in the chat too if you want to save those. But yeah, keep those questions coming and I'll read them at the end.
All right, so in a moment here, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to ask Ben, once I do this, if he's able to see the screen. Ben, are you able to see the screen?
Yes, we see the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's.
That's a good sign. All right, so let me make sure I'm able to, there we go. Right, so what we're going to be using is a fictitious family as we go through the aspects of the 10 warning signs, but I want to highlight what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk not just about the warning signs, but before we get into that, we're going to talk a little bit about what's typical.
This feel good, Tyrone.
I'm going to ask folks also, I forgot to mention this, if you can go to mute while we're having the discussion. That way we can limit any distractions for the other folks on here. So if you're not on mute, if you can go to mute, which is on the bottom left corner probably of your screen, that would be great. Thank you. So in addition to the 10 warning signs, before we even get into those, I'm going to talk a little bit about, I'm going to go back here for a second and see if this will come up. There we go. We'll talk a little bit about what's age-related memory, what's normal, memory loss, versus something that really is potentially a warning sign. We'll talk a little bit about what is dementia and Alzheimer's and the relationship between the two. So we'll get into that a little bit. After we talk about some of the warning signs, we'll talk about, okay, what do you do if you or a loved one may be showing some of these signs? What are the steps that we might be able to take? And what's the benefit of early diagnosis? And then we'll talk maybe a little bit about what are some of the tests and some of the things that can be done to better diagnose whether a person has Alzheimer's, dementia, or if it's something completely different, some other medical reason for a cognitive impairment. And as we go through, we're going to use a little fictitious example of a family called the Garcias. And with the Garcias, in this fictitious example, there's Mary, and she's a 73-year-old widow. She's a retired school teacher who she's always been almost like OCD when it comes to keeping her house in order and keeping herself in pristine condition. But suddenly her daughters are noticing that she's not doing that as much. She's stuff's getting dirty, stuff's getting laying around the house, piling up, and it's not like her. So she has two daughters, one Lydia and one Patricia. So Lydia, she's the eldest daughter of Mary, and she only lives a couple miles away. So imagine Mary living in, Northeast DC, and Lydia may be living in Northwest DC. And so Lydia lives pretty close by and sees mom on a regular basis. There's also Patricia. Patricia's the other daughter, and she lives in another state. She works long hours. She can't visit mom as often. So maybe she lives, in our fictitious example, maybe she lives up in Delaware or up in Pennsylvania. But they text regularly. They communicate regularly with mom and her sister Lydia. So we're going to use this fictitious example a little bit as we move forward in the discussion. Worried about mom. She keeps losing things and the house is a mess. Well, it's probably normal to get a little forgetful with age. It's so unlike her. Should we worry? Well, let's reach out to our old neighbor, Dr. Salloway. So we'll use this texting example a couple different times during our presentation. And although the family example with Lydia, Patricia, and are fictitious, the Garcia family, Dr. Salloway is not fictitious. In fact, Dr. Salloway is one of the leading experts in the world on Alzheimer's and dementia. So we'll hear a little video clip about what's normal in terms of age-related memory.
As we get older, cognitive problems become more noticeable for almost everybody, and it can vary from person to person. Typically with age, people have trouble coming up with the word they want right when they want it. They have trouble remembering names and they don't think quite as quickly. What's more concerning, or what might be the beginning of a memory problem, is people have a lot of trouble coming up with words or names, and it's happening more frequently, and the words or names don't necessarily come to them later. And then they start misplacing things, but not just once in a while, because we all misplace things, but more often. And it begins to interfere day to day. That should be a warning sign for people that this might be the beginning of a memory problem.
What I want to highlight there is a couple of things that Dr. Salloway was mentioning. It's a change in memory or behavior that is not normal. It's something that's affecting daily life, interfering with daily life. It's not normal for this person. It's a change in their daily baseline. And as Dr. Salloway said, we all forget things. Sometimes we forget where we place our keys, but we can remember that, okay, instead of putting them up on the key ring by the door, I actually put them in the kitchen. We can backtrack. The person who might be dealing with a cognitive impairment, for example, isn't able to do that. They're not able to do that kind of backtracking. So that becomes, and we'll talk more about some of these warning signs. But again, the point here is a cognitive impairment that is affecting their daily life. It's interfering with their ability to function as they normally have been for many, many years. Now, before we get into the more specifics of the warning signs, I want to go over what is Alzheimer's and dementia. We're going to have a couple of our doctors explain this. What's dementia and what's Alzheimer's? So we'll start with what is dementia?
Dementia is the umbrella term for an individual's changes in memory, thinking, or reasoning. There are many possible causes of dementia, and Alzheimer's is the most common cause. Other causes of dementia are vascular dementia, which is marked by changes in the blood flow in the blood vessels in the brain. Dementia with Lewy bodies, identified by specific brain changes throughout the brain that include the buildup of a protein known as alpha-synuclein. And frontal temporal dementia, which is marked by brain cell loss in the front sections of the brain or the frontal lobe. Each type of dementia may have distinct characteristics to cause specific behaviors in the individual. But there is also some overlap in behaviors among the types of dementia.
And what I want to highlight there from Dr. Snyder is the point again that Alzheimer's is one type of dementia. Alzheimer's is the most common type, however, of dementia. But I want you to understand there's about 14 major types of dementia. And of those 14, Alzheimer's accounts for 70 to 80% of all dementias. So it's a big part of that, but it's one type of dementia. The doctor highlighted a couple other types of dementia. There's frontal temporal lobe is one that she mentioned. So frontal temporal lobe, for example, it may affect the frontal cortex of the brain. So instead of affecting memory right away, the way, say, Alzheimer's might in the brain, it's actually affecting their ability to either recognize speech or being able to speak. But the memory may be still strong at that point. There's also something called Lewy body dementia. And for those people that remember Robin Williams, the actor and comedian, he ultimately, in a sense, died from Lewy body dementia. He actually died from suicide, but he died because of what was going on inside the brain from the Lewy body dementia. It didn't necessarily affect his memory the way it did affect his personality and caused hallucinations and delusions and huge personality spikes from being manic to depressed, etc. So the different types of dementia affect the brains in different ways. They have very specific patterns on what's happening. And to give you a sense on that, let's talk a little bit about and hear from one of the other doctors more specifically about what is Alzheimer's disease. And I'll talk then about the difference between that.
More than 100 years ago, Dr. Alice Alzheimer's described specific changes in the brain, what we call the formation of plaques and tangles. Now, Alzheimer's is a progressive brain disease that's marked by these key changes and is thought to impact memory, thinking, and behavior. The brain has three main parts: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. Each one plays a role in how the body functions. The cerebrum fills up most of your skull. It is part of the brain most involved in remembering, problem solving, thinking, and even feelings. There are about 100 billion nerve cells or neurons throughout the brain that transmit messages in order for us to create memories, feelings, and thoughts. Alzheimer's disease causes nerve cells to die, which leads to the brain tissue loss, or what we call shrinkage, and causes loss of function and communication between cells. These changes can cause the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, such as memory loss, problems with thinking, planning, behavioral issues, and even at the end stages, problems with swallowing.
Now, what I want to highlight there as well is that Alzheimer's affects the brain in a very particular way. Nerve cells, for those people that were part of our Healthy Living for Brain and Body, we talked about those 100 billion nerve cells that we have. Well, with Alzheimer's disease, the brain cells are starting to die off, the synapses, the connections in a very particular pattern. And that's can be tracked and identified that is Alzheimer's versus, say, Lewy body or frontal temporal lobe. They affect the brain and are causing the neuron loss, brain cell loss in very particular ways. And unfortunately, as the doctor said, right now, we don't have a real way to stop the disease. Ultimately, people will die from the disease. The body literally forgets to do bodily functions such as, swallow, breathe, etc. in the later stages, because the brain is literally deteriorating. So it's a very, very hard disease. There's a lot of very promising research, though, at the same time. There are a couple new drugs that are being used to maybe help with certain aspects of it, but we still really don't have a way to stop or slow down the progression in any significant way. There's a question here. It says, why is it important to know the signs? Instead of going into the video on that one, I just want to highlight. So if someone, one, is showing the signs, getting the person to the doctor and finding out what's going on. Again, it may not be Alzheimer's or dementia. It might be, as I mentioned, a drug interaction, thyroid disease, dehydration, etc. So we want to get the person to do that. But say a person has been diagnosed or can get diagnosed early based on the type of dementia. One, it may help them understand how their months and years may progress. A person with Alzheimer's, diagnosed with Alzheimer's, will typically live between 5 and 8 years. That's the average. Though some folks will live as long as 20 years with the disease, and some folks a much shorter period of time. But 5 to 8 years is the average around the world right now. We can talk more about that if you have questions when we get to the question and answer period. But knowing the signs and knowing, getting diagnosed early can be important, because the person, while they're still have the ability to make decisions on their own behalf, they can make legal decisions, financial decisions, comfort decisions on how they want their quality of life later on if their memory or other aspects of their behavior, or, were to progress with the disease, whether it's Alzheimer's or dementia. What I want to do now is go into the specifics of those 10 warning signs. And a person may show one or more of these signs, and I just want to make sure that you're aware of these, and don't assume, as I've continued to mention, that just because a person has one or more of these warning signs that they have Alzheimer's or dementia. It may be one of those other things that we've talked about. That's the key of getting the person to see a healthcare professional to find out what's going on. But one of the warning signs, we've already talked about this, is something that's going on that is disrupting daily life. It's not part of their normal way of living. We may notice that a loved one is starting to keep cheat sheets, memory aids, or taking more notes because they're having a harder time to remembering things. So they create lists for themselves. That's very, very common. Asking obviously the same question over and over again, whether that's during the same week or even sometimes during the same day. Being forgetful to the point where they can't remember and can't backtrack on things. We'll talk more about that as well in a moment. So changes and challenges in planning or solving problems is another warning sign. Here we're talking about someone who is able to make a recipe the same way suddenly is now having errors with a familiar recipe. They've been making the same meatloaf recipe for 20 years, but now they're putting the ingredients in incorrectly or in the wrong amounts. That might be a little disconcerting to the person if they realize it, or to the people around them if that person doesn't realize it. Keeping track of monthly bills, making simple mathematical mistakes like adding and subtracting. That can be very common. For a person who never made those kinds of mistakes before, small financial mistakes is often a telltale sign. And the person may not even realize it. It may be family members or friends or coworkers that may be noticing these things and calling it to your attention. It may take a lot longer to complete a task. It may, for example, whether it's, say, reading a book, it may be you may have been a vivacious reader and you can read a book a week. Now it's hard to get through a chapter every few days because you forget what has been going on in the book just a few pages earlier. So it's those kinds of things, more difficulty concentrating and taking longer to complete tasks. And I won't go over every single video here. We'll go over a few of them, but not all of them. So again, a challenge in planning and solving problems when they didn't have these kind of issues previously is definitely a warning sign. Completing familiar tasks. So, we may have walked or driven to the Giant, to the grocery store many times, but can you imagine suddenly, you or a loved one, we don't remember exactly how to get to the Giant. We've been going to the same store for 10 years. And now we're not sure, do I make a right or a left to get to the store? That kind of confusion is not uncommon and is a warning sign of a cognitive impairment. Again, it may not be Alzheimer's or dementia. It may be, but it could also be, a cause from something else, such as a drug interaction. Remembering rules of a game. Someone that might have been, a bridge player or even tennis player, whatever, they're suddenly now having more difficulty remembering the rules of their favorite games, or it's taking them longer to follow through and remember how to play the game. Definitely another type of common warning sign. We also, organizing a grocery list. They may have difficulty in doing those kinds of basic tasks that are now affecting and interfering with their daily life. A fourth type of warning sign is confusion with time and place. So we may, like today, may say, okay, wait, is today Thursday or Friday? But we're able to quickly remember, okay, wait, no, it's Friday. Boy, I'm looking forward to the weekend. But someone that's starting to develop a more significant cognitive impairment, they cannot remember, wait, is today Thursday, Friday? And they have it takes them much longer to figure it out. Or they might not remember what month it is. They may keep thinking, okay, wait, no, this is January. Wait, no, is it February? Is it March? And they have difficulty remembering that we've now just moved into March. So difficulty with and confusion about that is fairly common. So, if we see that with a loved one, or we see that with another friend or coworker, that can potentially be a warning sign of a cognitive impairment. Trouble understanding visual images and spatial cues. This one is definitely a bit disconcerting. So with Alzheimer's and what's going on in the brain, and we talk about these cognitive impairments and some of the neurons and synapses being affected. Although balance may be perfect for the person, now they're having ability judging distance on steps, being able to take steps effectively. That can be very, very difficult and lead to falls. Driving, they're stopping much closer to the cars in front of them. They think everything is fine. Even their eyesight in many respects is absolutely perfect. It's other issues going on within the brain associated with Alzheimer's or another type of dementia that is affecting their ability to judge distance. It may have nothing to do specifically, for example, with the eyes. So that one is definitely a bit disconcerting. And if we're noticing these kinds of things, these are the times, things that we want to know. We want to jot these down. We want to be factual, and eventually, bring this to the forefront of a healthcare provider. Another warning sign, problems with words, speaking, writing. This is one we probably hear most often in terms of a warning sign. Someone who is repeating themselves often. They forget that we've just answered the question for them, or that they've asked the question. That short-term memory is gone, and they're constantly repeating themselves. Sometimes it's issues with words. Now, many of us sometimes forget a word or we forget a name. That's not uncommon. But when we have on a regular basis starting to develop a problem with vocabulary, like instead of saying their wristwatch, the person may say my arm clock thing, and no matter what, they cannot remember that word, wristwatch, etc. And that can be very disconcerting to them, and obviously disconcerting to the people around them. It's when they cannot recall things after they try that that's a potential sign of a cognitive impairment. Stopping in the middle of a conversation, or the ability of the person to track what's going on in a conversation is also common. So people may stop getting involved with their social groups because they're having more and more difficulty following what's going on. So instead, they'll come up with excuses on why they're not coming to the knitting group or to the bridge group or whatever, or volunteering as much anymore because they're having difficulty keeping up with the conversations. They need to occur slower. So we'll hear from Phil here about what was one of the signs for Phil.
The other thing that I've increasingly been struggling with are words, which I've dealt with words my entire life, as an avid reader, as a reporter, as a writer. I struggle with them now.
And folks, you can probably see that with Phil. So he's dealing with the early stages of Alzheimer's, and he cannot remember. He's talking to us, and he's having difficulty with the words. So for the person, it may be very, very frustrating. They understand something's going on, and that alone can cause a lot of angst, personality behavior changes, etc., because of the difficulty just finding the right words, remembering the right words, sometimes even in the middle of the conversation. Again, it's something that, as Dr. Salloway talked about, in terms of something that's affecting daily life. It's not their normal baseline. And that's something that needs to get looked at. Another warning sign, again, something very common that we hear about when we think about Alzheimer's, is misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps. So like I said, there are keys. If we misplace our keys, we can often think about, okay, where was I last? I was last in the kitchen, so maybe I left them on the counter, and we can backtrack. A person that's may have Alzheimer's or another type of cognitive impairment, they don't have that ability anymore. That short-term memory is gone. And they may start accusing people of stealing from them. We see that a lot with seniors, that someone stole my wallet again, or stole my purse, or they keep moving it on me and I don't know why. And it's not that anyone's moving it on them or stealing from them. They just don't remember that they placed that wallet or purse somewhere else. And may even start placing things in inappropriate places, like putting the wallet in the refrigerator, or putting the keys in the refrigerator, or even more disconcerting, putting things inside the stove, which is not uncommon either. So it's obviously when we're dealing with those kinds of signs, it's disconcerting, and we want to document those. We'll talk more about that in just a few minutes when we talk about what to do if we think someone's having these kinds of, or just showing some of these warning signs. Decreased poor judgment. So think about this in terms of, a lot of scams that are going on right now. Those folks that may be dealing with early on aspects of Alzheimer's, they may not make very good decisions regarding money. They may believe things that maybe are easy for people to take advantage of. So they may buy things that they shouldn't be buying, or give money to people that they shouldn't be giving money to. Like we saw in the fictitious example of the Garcias, the mom now is Mrs. Garcia. She's not paying attention to her grooming. She used to be very neat, organized, almost OCD, and now she's not taking very good care of herself. That's, again, some of that decreased or poor judgment or something that's going on. Also, people may start thinking, okay, they believe it's right now the middle of summer. So in their minds, it is July, although it might be 30 degrees out and the beginning of March. And they'll wear shorts and a t-shirt and go outside in the morning thinking it's, bright sunshine and very warm. They're obviously a significant type of decrease in their cognitive ability there. This one I've hinted at as well, this next warning sign about withdrawal from social activities, work activities. They're not able to keep up with either the rules of a game or remember how to do a particular type of hobby the right way, trying to keep up with the conversation. So what happens is they start to move away from social activity, from group discussions, from social engagements. And for those that remember what we talked about in Healthy Living for Brain and Body, social interaction is extremely important for healthy living and for increased cognitive abilities. So when we start to see someone moving away from social engagement, we want to try to improve that. And someone that's even been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia, there's actually things in National Capital Area called memory cafes. We get people involved in group settings with other people that might be dealing with cognitive impairments, but still creating those social interactions. Getting people more involved with family activities, but making sure the family knows what to expect with this loved one, that there is a different new baseline and different way that we need to engage with the person. But it is a warning sign for sure. And the last warning sign is that I want to highlight is about changes in mood and personality. So remember when I talked about that, someone starts thinking that someone's been stealing their purse or their wallet. They may become suspicious of others, of particularly healthcare workers or even family members, that people are doing things to them, that people aren't listening to them. Others, because they realize there is a change going on in terms that they can't control, may become very depressed and upset. They may become angry. Sometimes they will lash out. It is, not part of what has been their normal baseline. So it is, something that we want to understand, something we want to document, and get the person to talk with a doctor. So these are what we call the 10 major warning signs. And again, just because a person has one or more of these doesn't mean it's Alzheimer's or dementia. It may mean, again, dehydration is a very common reason that a person has a cognitive impairment. Thyroid disease, many different other types of medical related issues can cause cognitive impairments. The key is getting an examination. So interpreting the signs, what do we do next? Here we go. Here's our fictitious example. Did you look at the warning signs info I sent? I did, but still don't know. Mom's showing a couple signs, but not all the time. How do we know if it's serious enough to see a doctor? And then we have, again, let's check with Dr. Salloway, but I'm going to skip this one with Dr. Salloway because we've highlighted this. It's, if we start to see, signs that are not part of their normal daily life, that's affecting their ability to function normally, then we want to get them to the doctor and find out what is going on. So I'm just going to highlight here again, why is it important to get the person to the doctor to hear and get diagnosed early about what's going on, to find out, one, is it Alzheimer's or dementia? If it's not, what else is going on and what needs to change from a medical perspective? If it is Alzheimer's or dementia, okay, what do we do next? And working with your healthcare provider, finding out, okay, what are we going to do now that the person has been diagnosed, and what decisions does that person need to make? And again, they may now be able to make, while they still have clarity on a regular basis, making those decisions on their own. But let's say, okay, what do we do if we are starting to notice some of these decisions, some of these warning signs? We're going to go through some of the steps. So we'll go through these somewhat quickly, but I want to highlight, okay, what do we do? So first thing is, what are the changes that you're seeing in, it could be yourself, it could be a loved one, it could be a coworker, and start to document that. What changes are you seeing? So you want to be factual and not just doing it by memory. What are you seeing, and when is it occurring? And so what else is going on? So you're seeing that there's a change in behavior. Is it occurring in a particular environment? Is it occurring only at work? Is it occurring during a particular time of day? We want to try to understand what else is going on with that situation. So is it occurring when other family members are over? Is it occurring when the person is alone? Is it occurring when they're doing their hobby? All these kinds of things, we want to start to document these things. We want to be as factual as we can. So once we get to the point of getting to the doctor, there's a lot of information here. Now, one obvious step is learning about the signs and benefits of early diagnosis. That's what you're doing right now. So we are doing step 3 here by going through this program. But a fourth thing is, so you may be seeing certain behavior changes and personality changes, but is anybody else seeing these? Are other loved ones, family members, friends, are they seeing anything? So just, you may be seeing something and someone else may see something else. We might get a bigger picture understanding on what's going on. So a coworker may notice certain little mistakes. A relative may notice that the emails that they're getting are having many more mistakes in them than usual. A friend may say, yeah, Mary or Tom, they're just not, they keep coming up with excuses about why they don't want to get together, for our weekend, game night. What else is going on? Now the key is, so you've marked down what is going on. Who's going to have the conversation with the friend or loved one that you see something going on? So just because you're the one that's noticing what's going on, you may be the spouse, you may be the husband or wife, it may be appropriate for you to have the conversation, but maybe not. Who is the person going to be most receptive to? So you need to think about that. Who should have the conversation with the loved one about what they're seeing and being, factual about that? And when's the best time to have the conversation? So, we're going to talk to mom or dad about, our concerns about their cognitive impairment. And we're going to have one of the siblings talk to mom or dad about it. And okay, when should we do that? Is it best right after dinner? Is it best first thing in the morning? Is it best after we go, do a family activity or something together? It's different for different people. So you need to think about when is it best to have that kind of conversation, because it can be very disconcerting to the person if they are not as aware that there's a number of issues going on, or they may be aware and they've been reluctant to bring it up. So the right place and the right time. A quiet place, less distractions is often very good. It could even be in a car ride when the two of you are together. And it's important to think about, what are you or that loved one going to say to the person who's showing the cognitive impairment? Think about it. Think about, put yourself in their shoes, in the loved one's shoes. How might they react? And if they react negatively, what might be your response? So thinking through and almost role playing it, maybe with other people, may be very beneficial, but definitely don't do it. Don't wing it. Think about the conversation first and be empathetic. Realize what that person may be going through and what it might feel like for them. Extremely important. And, so say, they got the information, they've got the facts, but now they're very scared. They're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize it had gotten this bad. I thought it was just me. I thought it was just becoming a little forgetful. You can offer to go to the doctor with them, or another friend or family member can offer to go to the doctor with them. That can actually be very comforting. And sometimes, though, we have people that will be reluctant to go to the doctor. In some types of situations like that, we may have to do what we call a therapeutic fib. Oftentimes, the person will go to the doctor because they want to find out what's going on. Is it medication-based? Is it something else related to dementia? And if they have the support, they'll go. Other people are so reluctant. It might be because there's a stigma due to the culture or their community, and they're very reluctant to go to the doctor. We may have to sometimes do a therapeutic fib. So it may be like, mom, dad, in order to renew your insurance, we need you to have your physical or your checkup this year. And they may be reluctant to have gone to the doctor because of the quote memory issues, but they realize, okay, yeah, I've got to get to the doctor so I can get my insurance renewed. It may not be exactly true. We call it a therapeutic fib, but we may be able to send information to the doctor ahead of time to say, we're concerned about mom or dad, or my wife or my husband. And so they can start to further assess if there's some, what's going on here. And you may have to have multiple conversations with a person. Not unusual. Again, the person may not remember what they've just been told about, that they're being forgetful. That short-term memory is gone. So you may have to answer that question or have those conversations multiple times so that they remember, or that they remember that there's a doctor's appointment next week that's been set up to address these issues. It may have to be mentioned multiple times for them to have that knowledge. And it can be frustrating. It can be very frustrating. So say a person has been then diagnosed. So let's just take the assumption that they've gone to the doctor. We're going to talk more about this in a minute. But what can be done? Well, you can turn to the Alzheimer's Association. We have a huge amount of information and support available, most of it for free. I mean, it's part of what the association does. So if a person's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, you can contact the Alzheimer's Association. We'll give you the 800 number again, as well as alz.org, to get more information about what's next, what might be a navigation program for this person, developing a plan of action for the person going forward. And more to learn about the resources and the impact of the disease and how things may progress. We can talk more about that in a little bit. The key, though, is definitely getting the person to see the doctor to find out what is going on. So we always recommend start with your primary physician. Usually you're in the person you've been seeing for a number of years, your internal doctor. That person may do some very basic tests. They may run blood tests to see what's going on. Could it be dehydration? Could it be other causes of an impairment? But if they do suspect it could be something related to Alzheimer's or dementia after they've done some basic tests, some basic paper and pencil type tests, they may then recommend the person to see a neurologist or a psychologist or other specialists to further get assessments of what is going on with the person. So again, start usually with the primary, and then that primary will do some basic tests, and based on those basic tests, then may recommend the person to see a specialist if it's not something that can be readily addressed by the primary doctor. I'm getting, here we go. Just getting out of this. So we talked about, I'm going to skip this for a minute. What are the benefits of early detection? Again, it's allowing the person to make decisions while they still can about financial and legal decisions. Our best friends, my wife and I are our best friends. Their parents are in their 90s and they developed Alzheimer's and dementia. And for the first 2 years that they're starting to develop cognitive impairments, our friends Mark and Caroline, they didn't want to rock the boat. They didn't want to get their parents upset about what they were seeing. So they didn't mention it. They kept it like the elephant in the room, the obvious secret, but they didn't want to upset their parents. But the disease was progressing. They hadn't been even diagnosed at this point. They had the ability at that 2 years earlier to really make very good decisions on their behalf about what they wanted to do legally and financially and their overall care going forward. 2 years later, they were both diagnosed and are both now in a memory unit in Alexandria, Virginia, and are not able to make those kinds of decisions for themselves the way that they could have earlier. So now they became suspect of Mark and Caroline in terms of are they trying to steal, you're trying to steal my money, which was not obviously the case. Or, you're just trying to take control of everything that we do. You just want to sell our house, this and that, and became very suspicious. At other times, they were absolutely fine and they had a lot of clarity, even during the day, but other times they were very suspicious about what was going on. So the goal here is there's a lot of benefit in the early detection and allowing the person to make decisions about financial, legal, and quality of life moving forward. I'm going to skip that video because I want to make sure we also have plenty of time for questions here. I'm going to skip through this a little bit. So we've gone over these things. This is just an example, going into that fictitious example again of what may be going on. Like in Mary Garcia's case, a medical history, physical exam, doing lab tests, but these mental cognitive status tests, that's the kind of thing a primary doctor may do. There might be more detailed testing that a primary will do, or they'll send the person to a specialist. If they've ruled out through medical history, the physical exam and lab tests that it's not something else that's medical, that it could be potentially Alzheimer's or dementia, then they might go recommend that person, to a neurologist or other specialist for assessment. And I've highlighted this throughout. Do dementia-like symptoms always result in a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or another dementia? No. As I said, in many cases, the cause may be the multiple drugs that a person is on is causing a cognitive impairment or personality change. It might be as simple as dehydration, which is particularly common for seniors and even in assisted living facilities. I'm going to skip through here. And I just want to go. I'm going to skip through again because I know we're going to run out of time here. All right, let's see if my computer. So as I mentioned, the Alzheimer's Association has a wealth of information. As I highlighted when we had Healthy Living for Brain and Body, you can call that helpline. We have a helpline that's 24/7, 365 days a year, staffed by master level clinicians that can help address questions that you have about Alzheimer's or dementia. Probably 99% of the questions they get, they've probably have already gotten. So the answers are there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. For that 1%, they may research, they may contact, maybe they're going to contact NIH to find out about the answer about a specific type of research that they might not have the answer to. But use that. It's a wealth of information and resource right there. Or you can go on just using your fingertips. You can go to alz.org. Again, a huge amount of information. Say you just want to learn more about Alzheimer's or dementia. It's right there. Say you want to learn about, what are the resources here in the National Capital Area? Again, you can search by National Capital Area, and again, a wealth of information about memory cafes, support groups for caregivers. If you're going to be a new caregiver, okay, what are you about to get yourself into? What does it mean? What are going to be the wonderful times and the really difficult times, and how do you deal with that? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. The wheel's been invented. You just need to tailor it to your environment, to your situation with your loved one. So with that, I'm going to go off of sharing here, and we will see if we have any questions from anybody in the group. And I know I went through a lot of this very quickly, but I want to be mindful as well as from everyone's time. So I'm going to stop sharing here. I think I'm trying to stop sharing. That one.
If you have any questions, please put your hands up. I'll be happy to allow you to unmute and ask the question.
All right. So I'll start, Ben, maybe with you. Were there any questions before we go to Andre? Any questions that came in during the chat, and then we'll go to Andre first after that.
Yeah, there was one question in the chat about, it says that now that we're aware, can cognitive behavior be repaired through therapy? I guess they're just looking to see if, if cognitive damage has happened, can that be repaired through therapy?
I'll just tell you what I've heard from some of the doctors. I don't know all the research. They may have a better perspective on this. But we are able to create new neural pathways in some cases. It depends on the severity of the cognitive impact and what's going on. But we are able to learn new tricks. Just because a neural pathway was damaged, we do have the ability, if we train it, we're able to create the ability to still complete a task and create a new neural pathway to do it. But Ben, I'll ask you if you have more information on that.
Yeah, nothing really additional to add to that. I think prevention is really the key here for a lot of these things. But yeah, nothing additional to add.
Okay, let's start first with Andre, and then we'll go to C. Kane after that. So Andre, if you want to mute.
Yes. Can it be enhanced about your being able to remember?
Well, hold on, Andre, a second. There's some, can everyone else go to mute?
Yes. Andre, can you please mute, turn off your TV or whatever?
Yeah, I did.
Noise?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Okay,
So
thank you, Andre.
Go ahead, Andre.
Is it possible to be able to improve your ability to remember by just constantly reading material that interests you, or some type of process that you can do to minimize those effects when you feel them coming on?
So Andre, the answer is yes and no. If there is, someone that actually has the disease is going to progress. But by doing cognitive stimulation, and that's what we're talking about here, it can benefit the brain and enhance and sometimes push off cognitive impairment. So the key here is doing things that are stimulating those neurons. So reading a book is, good, but if you've been reading the same type of book for a long period of time, say you read, say, mysteries, maybe start reading autobiographies or other types of things that are a bit different. If you've been doing, say, a crossword puzzles for 20 years, maybe start changing it up with like doing Sudoku or other types of puzzles. The goal here is trying to challenge the brain in different ways, learning a new language, learning a new hobby. So Andre, it's doing different things to challenge the brain, so you're getting those neurons stimulating. The research shows that for good brain health overall, it's very, very important. And for those that may be developing Alzheimer's or another type of dementia, the research is showing that we may be able to delay some aspects of the impact of the disease by constantly challenging those neurons and cognitive stimulation. All right.
Thank you, Andre. Are you finished, Andre? Okay, we'll go to Carla.
Yes, I'm finished.
Hi, how are you? I'm wondering, are they able to isolate the impact of other diseases on Alzheimer's? Like, what type of, or dementia rather, what type of dementia might be affected by someone suffering from diabetes?
So, good question. There are a range of different diseases that interact and have aspects associated with dementia. So there's, we may hear things like vascular dementia, which is like, the arteries are being filled with cholesterol or other things, and it's affecting the ability of the blood flow to the brain. There's Parkinson's related dementia. I've not heard it in terms of diabetes. It wouldn't surprise me if there was a relationship in some cases between the two, but I'm not aware of specific research off the top of my head that shows that direct correlation, but it's something we could look into. And even if you have that specific question, it might be a good question to call the helpline on and see if they have the specific research that might be able to call on. I'm just not, personally very familiar with the direct correlation. Carla, I don't know.
Okay, are you through, Carla?
Okay. And cerebral, is it cerebral ataxia? Have you heard of something called a cerebral ataxia or ataxia? Is that related to dementia?
Again, not something I'm familiar. I'll ask Ben if he's familiar with that. I am not.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure about that one either.
Okay.
Yeah, and Carla,
Thank
in
you.
both those cases, I would recommend call the helpline, because they could probably answer that question a lot quicker and more effectively than Ben or I, who are not the doctors per se.
Hello.
We're now going to go to Carolyn Lesson.
Okay, thank you.
Carolyn, unmute.
And then we'll go to Cynthia after that. So we'll go to Carolyn and then Cynthia.
Okay, thanks. You mentioned Parkinson's. My mother had Parkinson's and had hallucinations and everything. But when she would go to the hospital sometime, she would get what they called a hospital-induced delirium. Because a lot of seniors are on a lot of medicines and they go to the hospital and everything is changed around. Day is night, night is day. And so they hallucinate and have problems. And also the doctors mentioned that a lot of seniors present at the hospital with dehydration. And dehydration is very dangerous. We need to drink our water because dehydration can cause dementia-like symptoms and all types of other things. So that's another reason to drink our water. I'm not talking juice. I'm talking water. You need to drink the water. But also I read that people with dementia and Alzheimer's do well with music and dance. They may not remember their name. They may not remember your name, but once you start playing songs they're familiar with, they remember the words. So they have the dance patterns.
Yeah, and Caroline, I want to foot stomp two of the things you said about hydration. Extremely important. So we find from nurses and home care professionals as well about hydration, that many of the cognitive impairments that are occurring can occur due to dehydration, just as you said. And that can cause confusion. It can cause a whole range of medical related issues and significant cognitive impairment. The other thing you mentioned about someone that's dealing with, I'll call it more mid-stage or even somewhat later stage of Alzheimer's or dementia, music, dance, a range of things. We want to start using the other senses as a person starts to develop more aspects of the disease. So for those folks that, I don't know if you guys saw on 60 Minutes, I guess probably a couple months ago, Tony Bennett, he couldn't remember that he had played Radio City Music Hall the night before, but he could remember with one hearing a couple notes of a song, could remember the whole song and could sing that whole song. And so music, extremely, extremely important as a person develops. It may give them comfort. But the same thing with use of the other senses. So you mentioned dancing. It could be videos. It could be old pictures from when they were growing up. It could be the type of music they would listen to. It may be the smells of apple pie or pizza or flowers or whatever it may be that's appropriate for them. So we have to remember, as a person is dealing with these disease, what are some of the other senses? Touches can be very important. The person may become at that later stage non-communicative. They might not be able to talk, but that's person is still there. They're inside. So touch, brushing of the hair, letting them know that you're there. It can be, even if they don't know exactly who you are, it can be, you can see it, put a smile on their face, even if they've been non-responsive prior. So Caroline, all those things are extremely important. So thank you for, bringing those 2 points up. And we'll go over now, I think, to Cynthia. Is that correct, Teresa?
Yes.
That is correct. Cynthia is next.
Yeah, my concern is, what if the person hasn't been diagnosed yet, but they already have the symptoms? They're losing their glasses, they can't find the keys, and they're in the house, and they're going through a physical or some kind of surgery or this and that and the other. And then they find themselves outside and the police has to come and they can't remember where they live or this, that, and the other. So what is the progress for that?
So it is, this is the kind of thing we want to nip in the bud ahead of time. So exactly, Cynthia, and we see this regularly. You hear about a senior who is suddenly, has walked off and wandered. So wandering is definitely a significant issue and whatnot. The key, again, is if we're starting to see some of these signs, warning signs ahead of time, whether it's due to Alzheimer's, dementia, or some other reason like dehydration, because that can also cause wandering. We want to get that person to that primary care provider ASAP. We don't want to wait till they're having to have to deal with, say, the police because they wandered off and they can't remember where they are and they don't have any ID on them. It's so disconcerting to that person. It's so disconcerting to the family members. The goal is sooner than later. And that's why people get pissed off when I tell them this, because it may be having to have those kind of tough conversations with that loved one, with that mom or dad, or with that spouse ahead of time. You don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to upset them, but you need to have those kind of conversations, get that person to that primary care provider sooner. So you need to be honest, straightforward, and have the conversation. So Cynthia, very good point. And we're trying to nip that in the bud and get ahead of that.
But what does the police do? Okay, like if the police come and they don't have no identification, they don't have no address, they don't know their name, what do the police department do? Especially if somebody don't call, what's the procedure for that,
I don't know the specifics, honestly, on that, Cynthia. I do know that once the first thing they'll look at is for missing persons.
Yes.
There are people in terms of mobile, I call it there's a crisis unit usually, and I believe DC has it, as well as Northern Virginia and Southern Maryland, where they have trained professionals to work with that person to try to get them to help identify something about their life, where they are, where they were prior. So it's not just the police officers, but it's other healthcare, mental health professionals that start working with that person right away, try to help.
There's also, so I put in the chat there, so for the District of Columbia, there's what's called Adult Protective Services. This is very similar in any kind of county around the US. This is typically what's going to happen, like what you're describing, if the police might find, or if someone's in a bad kind of spot or something, the Adult Protective Services are the kind of social work groups that will step in those kinds of situations. If you feel like something like that is going on, that link I put in the chat has a phone number for that department there in DC. You can give them a call.
Thank you, Ben. Any other questions before these two very important persons leave?
Wait, who are the important people? No, you guys are.
You're bringing us important information. That makes you important.
Anything else that you guys have? Any questions you have at all about Alzheimer's, dementia?
There was one comment I was just going to say, there was one quick comment in the chat. If you'll just talk a little bit about the importance of exercise, just briefly, Aaron.
So exercise, and this goes back a little bit to a previous session we did on healthy living for brain and body. Remember, we have those 100 billion neurons that are in our head, these nerve cells. Those nerve cells need oxygen and nutrients. The way they get that is through our blood flow. So if we're just sitting on the couch all day in front of the tube, we're not getting that blood flow moving very effectively. So exercise is extremely important. The goal is to get more of the blood flow, because every heartbeat that we have, that we basically are dealing with in our bodies, 25% of that heartbeat, that blood flow, is going to our brain, because the brain is so important. And it's not only getting the blood moving through the body through exercise, it's also what we eat. So whatever we're eating, it's, I say what's good for the heart is good for the brain. So if we're putting junk in our bodies, it's not just affecting our heart, it's affecting our brain. So that blood flow is going to our brain. It's affecting those neurons. And if we're eating a lot of bad things, that can also cause cognitive impairment. The one thing I will highlight though, in terms of exercise, if you haven't been exercising, please don't go out and start running like 2 miles a jog. Please work with your healthcare professional, find out what's going to be best for you. Or if you've been exercising, maybe you can, move it up a notch, challenge yourself a little bit more. But if you haven't been exercising, start doing something small. It may be walking around the block with friends or family, but do start. There is a strong benefit for cognitive health in terms of exercise. Sorry, long-winded answer, Ben, to your short question.
Okay, we have Denise Jackson, who would like to ask a question. Go ahead,
Yes.
Denise.
Good afternoon. Yes, my question is, people with Alzheimer's, do they take medication for it? And are scientists working on something to help with the Alzheimer's?
So Denise, very good question. There are medications right now that are mostly deal with, I'll say, symptoms of Alzheimer's, where it may give some clarity for short periods of time. And those are things called cholinesterase inhibitors and glutamate modulators. So there are, and they've been around, these kinds of medications for a number of years, and they may help certain people depending on their body chemistry with clarity for short periods of time. There is a new drug that's come out recently, a Biogen drug called Aduhelm, and that for certain people may remove some of the plaques and tangles inside the brain and may help.
Yeah.
But that one is still, it's relatively new and apparently does not help all people and is only being used for early stages right now of the diseases.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Because my daughter father have it, and he had the early stages, but he also had a COPD.
Ah, okay.
So he going through both, because the COPD deal with oxygen to the brain too, and so he's in the early stage, but because he calls sometimes me, or he'll call other people, maybe one of his brother's name, but he's in the nursing home right now.
Okay.
So, and he have told my daughter that the nurses took his money, or like you were saying in the videos, what they might say, and that might not be so, but in his mind, that's what he's, thinking.
Right. And
And
Denise, that's an important thing. And I want to highlight this for everyone the reality of that person, that loved one, may not be real reality, but it is their reality. We have to be empathetic and understand that. And, they may think someone's stealing from them because in their mind, that's what's happening. We have to put ourselves in their shoes and say, okay, I'm sorry that someone keeps stealing your purse. Maybe we'll get you a new purse. Maybe the exact same purse, but, we're having to deal with that. But in terms of some of the medications, Denise, it may be that you guys can talk to the doctors and ask about, whether cholinesterase inhibitors, glutamate modulators, if they'd be appropriate for the loved one, but they may not. And it's only depends on the person's situation.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a good day.
You too, and have a great weekend, Denise.
You too.
I have a question. In addition to trying new things and exercising and dehydrating, is there a specific diet? Is there that one could feed on a daily basis to keep the memory sharp? Is there anything?
Teresa, there's 2 diets in particular that the association recommends, and I'll highlight that and why those 2 diets, but a lot of it has to do with just really eating healthier, a lot less trans fats, a lot less salt, a lot less fast food. But the 2 diets are, there's the Mediterranean diet and what's called the DASH diet. The DASH diet is the diet to stop hypertension. Both of those diets are low fat more healthy oils, reducing trans fats, a lot more fruits and vegetables than people probably eat on a regular basis. So those are the two diets that the association recommends based on what the research has shown. Those two diets seem to be beneficial for long-term cognitive health. I don't know if that answers your question, Teresa.
Oh, it does. It does, most definitely. Okay, so we've reached past the 2 o'clock hour. Aaron and Ben has really shared with us some excellent information. And so we're going to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, because he's doing this all on a voluntary basis. They both are
Yes.
taking time out to share this important information with us. Again, we want to thank you, Ben and Aaron, and maybe look forward to another presentation you may do for us in the near future.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you guys
Bye-bye.
for your time.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank
Any
you.
questions from the help desk? Anyone have anything? Karen Murphy, are you there, Karen?
Yes, ma'am.
We've been trying to reach you by phone. If you could call the help desk after the presentation, is that possible?
Yes.
Okay, because I just sent a text, I just sent in the chat asking you if you can do that. That would
Yes.
be helpful. I'd like
Yes.
to get you ready for next week.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Anyone else?
I
Anything
enjoy
else?
that. But it's a little confusing because dementia and Alzheimer's, all that so much together.
Mhm.
You have to really
like the same.
concentrate in order to see the difference, right?
Right, yes, it is difficult to see where
yeah.
they're
The
separate.
difference.
Yes.
But
Very
you can
thin.
notice some of the things, like you said, when people start forgetting things where they put, or they blaming other people, or when they get in a conversation, they get angry if they can't have their last word and stuff like that. You can notice those things. But just like you
Yes.
say, it's best to go to the doctor, take them to the doctor when you notice a difference in the way they're acting.
Right. Another thing I would highly recommend, because I've seen it happened, even you may not have Alzheimer's now, dementia, whatever, get your legal papers in order. Get your legal papers in order. In the event that this disease does creep on, you have someone in place who's going to advocate for you, represent you in the best. I've seen it happen time and time again where it happens, and then family members are now, especially children of these individuals are now fighting over the bank account and who's doing this and who's doing that. And it just brings tremendous pain.
Yeah.
And it costs money now, because now you have to get a lawyer, you got to get a court order from the judge. Who's going to access your bank account? And who's going to be making decisions for you at the hospital? All these things need to be in place before this disease creeps.
Hold on a minute. Yes.
Must be in place for everyone.
Okay.
You don't know when it's coming. And it happens to the best of us.
Yes.
And there's no age that says that it's going to happen at 70. I know personally of individuals where it happened in the 50s. Yes.
Yeah,
So
right.
Please get your legal documents in order, so in the event it does happen to you, you have the right person advocating for you.
Okay, thank you.
And not having to pay money to the lawyers to get a court order for someone to represent you, because that's where the money will go to the lawyers.
And by being a senior, you don't have that extra money no way to be
right.
doing something.
Exactly. The only reason I'm saying this is because I was involved with a case a year ago where I stepped in to help someone with Alzheimer's, and the kids were fighting of who's got, one kid is emptying the bank account of the mother's Social Security, while the other one is bringing in a carer to care for that mom, but yet unable to get the money. Yes, I've heard of 2 cases. I was involved with one. I personally had to step in and care for that woman for 3 months until they figured out. So it does happen. Okay? All right, I guess we'll see you all on Tuesday.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right.
Hey,
Have a
thank
good
you.
weekend.
Have a good
Don't
weekend.
forget, we have group training
No
this week. We have
Monday.
group training at Francis
No
Gregory
Monday.
Library in the Southeast. Call help desk if you need some training on your iPad on Monday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Tuesday, no Monday.
Tuesday.
Tuesday. No, the training is on Monday at the library. Monday, Oscar. Training is on Monday at the library.
Yeah, but not here on there.
No, not online. No, not online, at the library.
Oh,
Yeah. And you're
Okay.
looking sharp again
Yeah.
with your bow tie, Oscar. I like your bow tie.
thank you. Okay, but
Which library?
yeah, but not the what is going to be which library?
Francis Gregory this Monday.
Oh,
We're at Francis
no, no,
Gregory this Monday.
no.
And
Where's
then
it located?
when
Where's it
do we,
located?
we're going to be, let me see if I could get the schedule up and.
Oh, it's the 21st. The
Huh?
21st.
Yes, for Cleveland Park, in
Park.
your library,
Right.
yes. Cleveland
Yeah,
Park, yes,
Cleveland Park, the
yes,
21st, Monday the 21st.
yes.
All right.
Okay,
Okay. All right.
all right, Oscar, have a wonderful
Okay,
weekend.
bye.
God bless.
Bye bye. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice weekend. Enjoy
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
the
Thanks, weekend.
beautiful weather now. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.